Okay, one day the bishop just kind of walked up to me and asked me if I would go on a mission. And I hadn't even thought about it. And I hadn't even talked to my parents about things like that. You know, my dad was not been a member of the church. He joined when I was about a senior in high school. But anyway, I said, yeah, without even thinking. I said, yeah. I didn't even discuss it with my parents. I said, I'll go on a mission. Well, I went on a mission and I got into my field of labor in December of 1953. But when I was getting ready to leave to go on my mission, the government told me, the military said, the Korean War, this was in 1950, the Korean War is just starting. And I hadn't even heard of Korea. And they said, your group, you're allowed to go on this mission. But after this, no more guys can go on a mission unless they're physically unfit for military duty. When you get back from your mission, report to your draft board. So that's what I did. I served my 2 years, got back December of 1952, started the spring semester at ASU in the spring of 1953. And that's where I met Sybil, is that one semester. She was a LDS student there at the LDS Institute, and that's where I met her. But then I went home after the semester was over. We dated. I had a few dates with Sybil. And I went home for the summer and working. And my plan was to go back to school at ASU in the fall of 1953. Well, I broke my leg in the summer of 1953, playing ball for my dad. My dad had organized a ball team, and I got my leg broken, and I couldn't work. And so I didn't start the fall semester at ASU, and so I got a draft call to go into the Army. The letter said, "Greetings, you are hereby commanded to report to Fort Bliss, Texas." I said, "I can't come. I've got a broken leg. It's in a cast." They said, "As soon as that comes out of the cast, you're in." So I said, okay. So I got the cast off in October of 1953. I went to Fort Bliss, Texas, and started my basic training. I finished my basic training in probably late February of 1954, maybe March. The day I finished basic training, my order said that I was to go to Korea. I went to Fort Lewis, Washington to wait for the ship to get loaded up. And it was a troop ship left over from World War II. I don't know how many hundred men it would hold, but they got us on that ship. It took us 16 days to sail from Seattle, Washington to Japan. And then when we got to Japan, we were there for a few days, and then they put us on another boat to take us to the southern tip of the peninsula of South Korea. And the truce had just recently been signed. And so at this point, the shooting wasn't going on, but our job was there. The North Korea, a line was drawn, and they called it the DMZ at the 38th parallel. That separated what became North Korea from South Korea. And we were there to protect south of that line and to prevent the Chinese from coming down and sweeping down through the whole peninsula and taking it. So it was kind of a policing duty that we were there. And I was trained as an outpost man. That means that you're out in front of your lines, and if you see something, you had a little radio and you called your troops who were behind you to alert them that something was coming. It could be troops on foot, it could be tanks, it could be planes, but whatever you saw, you need to alert your troops that you were coming. And most of those guys got killed because you're out in front. And so, but they had pulled them in when I got there. And so I served in the intelligence department there. And I will say one more thing that was important at the time. When I got to Korea and then was shipped further north on a military train, I was assigned to a unit. It was just a single unit. It wasn't part of 8th Army or anything. It was just a single battalion, automatic weapon, self-propelled. And my job, since I wasn't going to be an outpost man, was to serve in the intelligence detachment. But what I wanted to say about that was that there was a chaplain in our unit who was LDS. Now, there weren't very many LDS chaplains in the Army, and a chaplain is there to kind of take a little bit of care of the spiritual needs of the soldiers. And he rotated home because of the tour of duty was 16 months. He completed his duty, and he would have sacrament for us on Sundays. And there were some Air Force guys on the other side of the base too. The Air Force guys and the Army guys, we could have a sacrament because we had an LDS chaplain that had the authority to do that. When he rotated home before he left, he asked me if I would be the group leader so we could continue to have the sacrament after he would be left. Somebody would have to have the authority, and he was asking me if I'd be the guy, if I'd be the group leader. And I said yes. He put his hands on my head and authorized me, set me apart as a group leader, and gave me the authority to conduct a sacrament meeting. He rotated home. One day I heard them call it my name, and I went to check and see what it was, and they said, one of your LDS boys is in trouble. Go see if you can find him. They gave me a Jeep. I drove up to Seoul, Korea, and then for some reason, I don't know how I knew that, but I knew somehow that he was in the hospital. This young LDS boy who I didn't know, he hadn't been coming to our meetings, that he was in the hospital. So I went to see if he was in the hospital. I was walking down the hall, and the doors had a little glass window in them where you could look into the window without actually opening the door. I looked in there and I saw this young guy laying in the bed, and I could see that he was unconscious. Just then, a doctor came walking down the hall, asked me what I was doing, what I needed, and I told him what I was doing. I was looking for a specific person. He said, yes, that's the one. That's the guy. But he said he got a Dear John letter from his girlfriend, and he put his rifle to his head and pulled the trigger. The bullet went through his head, took out most of his brains, and we're going to send him home to his mother, and she won't get the insurance that all soldiers have because the wound was self-inflicted. And I was so sad, and immediately I thought, what can I do? I was a young kid myself, and I just felt terrible, but what could I do for him? He didn't have any brains. But I've thought about that a million times, and I still have guilt feelings about it. But that's the way it went.
Tell a story about Sybil was waiting for you when you went off to Korea. You tell about how you asked her to marry you.
I don't remember it, to tell you the truth, Amber. I know it was at Christmas time, and there was kind of a break in your basic training. There was a basic training where it was just infantry training. They just train you how to kill somebody up close. The second part of your training, or the second 8 weeks, is where they teach you some military occupation, something they need you for in the military. And that's where I was trained to be an outpost man, to be out in front. And I had dated Sybil before during that one semester that I was at ASU, I dated her a few times, and I liked her a lot. So when Mom and Dad came to visit me and brought Sybil with them to visit me at Fort Bliss, Texas, I had sent my mother $100 and asked her to buy an engagement ring. It was an engagement ring, had a nice little diamond on it, plus there was the band, the wedding band, so it was a set. So at some point I gave her that, while she was there, I gave her that ring, and I must have asked her if she wanted it, if she would marry me, but I can't remember specifically what I said or what I did or anything about it. It's so romantic, I can't remember too much about it. So I did. I gave her the ring, and she accepted it. And then when I got to Korea, I knew I'd be there for 16 months, and I didn't think it was fair for her. So I wrote her a letter and told her that she could forget about our commitments and start dating other guys. And that meant she would be free to marry somebody else if she felt that's what she ought to do. She never answered that question specifically, but she didn't start dating anybody else. And she waited for me the 16 months. Actually, it was more than 16 months.
Do you remember any details about your wedding day? Did you guys have to travel far to get married?
The only thing I remember about our wedding day was that my mom and dad were there at the temple, at the Mesa Temple, and her mom and dad were there, and one of my school teachers and his wife were there. I had become very good friends with their school teacher, so they were there, and one of my school chums was there with his wife, and we had a picture somewhere taken on the outside of the temple, and they were all there, and but
That's it right there.
I don't remember specifically any. I just knew that I was scared. I was doing something that I was not used to doing. I hadn't been to a temple. I'd been in Korea, and I've been away from the church for almost 2 years.
So how long after you got home did
After
you
I
get
got
married?
home, I was home just a few, I'm going to say maybe 3 or 4 months.
Before you got married? I mean, you got home
this
and
was
then you.
before I went in the Army.
Oh.
I hadn't been back too long when I was drafted. Then I was gone away from the church again for another 16 weeks or so.
So you guys didn't
No,
have a. You
16,
didn't,
I should say 16 months. It was not 16 weeks. I was actually in Korea 16 months, but of course you had the travel and everything else. And so I was really away from home for the Korean duty for.
so after you got married, did you have a little party, or did you guys go out to eat or something?
They had a reception. Charlotte, Sybil had set this all up. I didn't know anything how to do all that kind of stuff. She and her mother had set it up where we had a reception, and
What do you mean?
you
got back
you're cutting the cake, and they're taking pictures of you cutting that cake and all of that stuff.
That was in Pima?
No, it was down in Phoenix. Her
Oh.
ward, wherever her ward was. Down
Oh,
in
she
Phoenix.
was from Phoenix.
She was from Phoenix. She grew
Oh.
up, born and grew up in Phoenix.
I didn't know
and
that.
So
Okay.
that's where the reception was. And I was just a dummy doing whatever they told me to do, And then
And then where did you move after you got married? You lived.
she had set it up where there was a little apartment just off campus on Orange Street there
Oh.
in Tempe.
Do you remember the address?
No, but I know it was Orange Street.
Okay.
And now the campus has grown so much that it has engulfed all of that. It is much bigger than that. So where we lived is just part of the campus now, but it wasn't part of the campus at that time.
Where were you living when you had your first baby?
We were living in that little old apartment, and Deneen was born in 56, and I didn't graduate from ASU until 1957.
Oh.
So we were still living in that little, it was kind of a little part of a house, and they had divided it in half,
Yeah.
where there was my friend and his wife that just got married. They were living in one half, and Sybil and I were living in the other half. And we were just as happy as if we had good sense.
Oh, good.
And I remember, I'll tell you this, it just come to my memory. One of the first things that, one of the big dishes, is her people were British people, English people. And one of the recipes that she enjoyed making and eating.
You're talking about your wife?
Was called, it was some kind of a curry. You put eggs and you kind of made kind of like a curry that you put it on toast.
You're talking about your neighbor's wife, or you're talking about
Sybil?
Oh, okay.
When she first made it, she thought she was really making something good for me, and I couldn't eat soft eggs very well. She made this. There's a name for it, but I can't remember it. But it's a kind of a It's a curry, some kind of a curry, and it's a mixture with some milk and eggs that are half cooked and everything. And
so she was trying to impress you with a fancy.
she was trying to impress me with this great recipe, and I pulled up and I wouldn't eat it. And that was our first argument. She was very unhappy. So I realized I had to grit my teeth and shove that stuff down my throat, whatever it was. Just let me add that where I met Sybil was at the LDS Institute when I was at ASU. The Institute was just across the street from the campus. So the LDS kids would gather there for classes, for religion classes, for activities, dances, and all kinds of just activities for where you could just do everything with LDS kids. And that's where I met Sybil, just that one semester. Okay. Playing table tennis. She had on a pair of green pedal pushers. And even though she had her back to me, I could tell that she was, there's something about her that attracted me to her. It couldn't have been, well, I won't say strike that one. Of course, I had testosterone flowing at that time, too. Because I grew up in a home where my dad was not a member. We did not have family prayer. We did not have gospel discussions in our home. So I made up my mind when I became a missionary that I wanted to have family prayer with my family, and I wanted a wife that had a lot of faith and wanted to go to church. And I knew that's what Sybil was. She was a person of great faith. And she didn't say a lot about it, but she had great faith, and the church meant a lot to her.